Haven City. An ugly city. Haven Square. Tempest's condo.
In the new groundbreaking action film of the world, starring award winner Arrington Slade as Jet Murrow, co-starring Roy Rushmore as Neil McJibs, Jet Murrow was a clean man until today, because today, duty calls. Watch as his workday suddenly takes a turn for the worse as he ends up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. Karate action, grand larceny, hot sex, blood, guts, sweat, and most of all, poop. Come and see Arrington Slade in this summer's blowout movie blockbuster, The Dirtiest Job. When the job is too dirty today, save it for the Murrow. Poop.
The camera pulls away from the TV screen, and we see Tempest looking impressed by the spectacular-looking film. His agent pauses the trailer and asks him what he thinks about it. Tempest explains that he thought it was pretty damn entertaining, to which the agent replies, "Good, because I have Arrington Slade on the phone right now, and he wishes to speak with you. He's offering his support for the fundraiser." Tempest accepts the call. Arrington Slade and Tempest have a jovial conversation for about 30 minutes. Arrington offers to join Tempest on his tour and will make an appearance along with Tempest to Smaven's on the way to the Gala fundraiser today. Before ending the call, Tempest congratulates Arrington on his recent marriage and looks forward to meeting his wife later on. Tempest grabs his coat and prepares to head towards Smaven's. His agent updates him on his agenda for today. We are going to meet the CEO for lunch at Sandwich Maven's Haven to promote the restaurant and our partnership. Now, with Oscar Award-winning Arrington Slade and his new mutant wife, we'd be sure to garner attention for the cause. Tempest shoots her a funny look in response to the mutant wife comment before exiting. R-Type is leaning against a nearby wall and changes the song on his device. Then he follows them into the limo. Scene. Sandwich Maven's Haven. We see Blau Himmel sitting at a booth table, alone, inside the Sandwich Maven's Haven. She spent the past 30 minutes perusing the menu as the waiter awaits. Just as she gets ready to call the waiter, the bounty hunter from last week slides into her booth seat while trying to look natural. Blau, startled, looks up at the tall, armor-clad bounty hunter. The head of his target from last week can be seen adorning his chest on a necklace of skulls. Her reflection can be seen on his helmet visor covering his whole face. An awkward silence ensues until they both begin to say something but stop when they hear the other one talk. This happens twice before Blau finally asks him what the hell he's doing there. He calls the waiter over and requests 2 glasses of neon fuel and 2 Maven Munch lunches. In a soft tone, he greets Blau and asks if he can join her for lunch and that he'll pay for it. Blau approves of this and points out the fact that he invited himself already. She then asks what on earth would make him think that she would even want Maven Munch lunch. How does he know what she wants? He looked extremely distracted up until she asked that question, and then he begins to fall out laughing. Blau pauses and then begins laughing along with him. Because, who the fuck doesn't want Maven Munch lunch? They laugh non-stop for about 45 minutes. Blau and the hunter have a simple conversation. She shares her story about the mutated kitten and even retrieves it from her bag and puts it on the table to show him. Amused and entertained, the bounty hunter shares a story of his about a target that he was hunting that almost killed him this morning. The hunter then informs Blau that the CEO of Smaven's, along with a few celebrities, should be showing up today around lunchtime to promote the restaurant. Blau asks for clarification on this. The hunter ignores her question and in a serious tone says, "Put your head down. I have work to do before the CEO gets here." He suddenly begins to stop talking and looks off in the distance behind Blau. Blau sees this and turns around just to see what he's looking at as he shouts, "No, don't look!" She turns, and the hunter pulls her head down and slams it into the table as bullets whiz past her head. A few of those bullets whiz into the hunter's helmet, causing his neck to jerk violently, but overall he's protected. He swings out of the booth seat, grabs a big-bodied waiter as a body shield, and pulls out a high-tech crossbow in one motion. A multi-armed ruffian, sitting 3 booths away, reveals himself and his firearms and stands up out of his seat at the table and screams at the hunter, telling him that he's seen him in hell before he gets put in a cell, and he begins to release a barrage of bullets towards them. People in the restaurant begin to duck, scream, and run, but all of the regulars know that someone dies in Smavens weekly and instead finish their food, but keeps their head low, because this is normal shit. Blau looks terrified, but also seems to be enjoying it a bit. The bounty hunter extends his bow out to Blau as she crouches her head in her seat. He asks her to pull the tab out of the orb dangling on the tip of the knocked bow. A wave of bullets arrive, peppering the big waiter's midsection as blood and intestines spray out all over the place and splatters across Blau's face. Blood pours all over the customer's Neon Dream sandwich. They pause, look at it, add some neon sauce, and then continue to eat it because they're just that damn good. Some bullets whiz by Blau's hand as she reaches to pull the tab, and she's successful. The hunter fires the now ignited orb into the direction of the target 20 yards down the aisle as hundreds of blue laser arrows fly out, bouncing off of the walls and lethally penetrating the multi-armed mark, leaving him dead and pinned up. The hunter drops the dead waiter to the ground and sheathes his crossbow. Suddenly, everyone in the restaurant begins to applaud. The bounty hunter and Blau arise to receive praise when they realize the applause is directed to the CEO of Smavens, who had just entered the building with the award-winning action star Arrington Slade and famous street magician Gordon Gale. Blau, the bounty hunter, and the rest of the customers finish their food and rush over to meet the three. Blau has an extended conversation with Gordon and learns his motivation for a better tomorrow for the infected. He also learns of her skill and exchanges info to meet maybe and discuss a place for her at the center one day. The bounty hunter sizes up R-Type X as he stands off to the side by Gordon. R-Type doesn't seem to pay him any mind and listens to his own music. Time passes as Blau lingers around Smavens as they take pictures and enjoy lunch specials when suddenly something terrible occurs. A middle-aged man, a known gang member, and belonging to a known hate group of mutants, stumbles into Smavens with his forearm ripped off, bleeding everywhere. A disturbance can be heard taking place outside as Tempest, R-Type, and Blau rush to see what's going on. Tempest kindly asks Blau to tend to the injured man, and she complies. Blau immediately identifies the gravity of his wound and rushes through all of Smavens' inventory to collect the supplies and ingredients she needs to stop the man's bleeding. Blau runs into the kitchen looking for tools when she runs into the cook who destroyed all of those Neon Dream sandwiches that morning that she was seconds late. They lock eyes. Shiakuma slides over to him and lands killer blows to his body before finally ripping out his heart, along with the tools that she was looking for. She then wakes up from her daydream and runs over to him and mugs him for the tools that she needs. Then she runs back to the bleeding man. With various ingredients, seasonings, and sauces, Blau was able to squeeze the sweet, greasy nectar from Neon Dream sandwiches into lettuce wraps that she grew with the mutated cat corpse, and wrapped his arm in the lettuce coated in a medicinal sandwich marinade concocted by Blau, and she saves him. The CEO looks utterly amazed and everyone applauds. He even asks her for the recipe, but Blau ain't letting them have that. Tempest and R-Type arrive to the horrific sight outside. Mutants and a well-known hate group are out in the street killing each other. The throat of a woman gets ripped out by a mutant with barracuda-like teeth. A mutant barely wielding a large sword can be seen getting tased to the ground by 3 attackers as they approach slowly before hacking him to death with machetes in the middle of the street. From the perspective of Tempest, the entire area is engulfed in flames of hate as clouds of red and various colors of blood form walls of mist as it gets spilled senselessly. Infuriated, Tempest shouts, extending his hands, causing time to stop all around him. The camera cuts to multiple people, all nearly escaping their death, thanks to the time freeze. We also see Advocate off in the distance, hidden in an alleyway, frozen, with his phone out, recording the event. Tempest slowly walks from person to person, disarming them, and moving bullets and sharp edges away from their lethal trajectories. Tempest gives a bold and direct speech denouncing the violence and commanding the hate mob to go home, and offered the infected a home to return to, that home being his center that he's building. After saying his piece, and seeing and feeling a drastic change in the emotions of all of them, he unfreezes them. Suddenly, all of the mob begin to mutate and morph in agony, including one of the mutants. Tempest, confused, doesn't know what to do and doesn't want to freeze them amid such a painful ordeal. People begin screaming and pointing out that the mass mutation is occurring again, and they run for their lives. The mob wiggles and twists in pain until they all die after about 10 minutes of it. Tempest and R-Type look mind-boggled. Blau comes out from inside of Smaven's to the commotion holding a container of secret healing sauce that she made. She asks what happened as Tempest stands speechless. A helicopter comes flying over the building, shining cameras and lights down on the scene. To make sure that he's not late for his own gala event, Tempest and R-Type X swiftly leave the scene. Tempest, R-Type, and Smaven's CEO sit in the back of the limo on their way to the fundraiser while watching the news about the event that had just occurred. Breaking news. Governor Gabucci speaks on the recent events. We see Gabucci accompanied by his directors and his new night-skinned girlfriend to the podium. Governor Gabucci announces a temporary mutant ban and to have all infected quarantined. The crowd goes insane as extra law enforcement and security mobilizes. A man shouts out, asking how is he able to make such a decision when his new girlfriend is clearly a mutant. The governor replies, stating that he sees both sides of it and must take serious safety precautions because people are dying. The crowd goes berserk and begin fighting amongst themselves. The governor explains that after what he saw today, it must be done. The news cuts to a viral video making its rounds of cell phone footage of the recent event, showing Tempest raising his hands. Then in a blink of an eye, people begin to mutate and die. Tempest sees this and is disheartened by what it looks like. He and R-Type X know that the camera footage was also frozen and unfrozen, making it look like Tempest was the cause of the mutation. The public's lack of understanding of the Gamma is causing civil unrest. The news cuts to a reporter standing next to the famous award-winning actor Arrington Slade. Arrington Slade, and close friend to Tempest, was a witness to the mutant's destruction. She holds the mic up to Arrington as he stands in tears, being comforted by his night-skinned wife. He explains how Tempest was to blame for this mutant attack. R-Type sees this bullshit and turns slowly toward Tempest, who looks pissed. Arrington wasn't even there. He didn't even show up. The news then cuts back to the governor. He addresses Tempest in the public eye on live television. Tempest, we the people of Haven appreciate all you've done for this city, but we have questions, and you have until the end of the night to turn yourself in. The crowd erupts, and cameras shudder as this new night-skinned girlfriend latches onto his arm and exits the stage with him. Scene. Tempest's Gala fundraiser. Hours go by as Tempest and R-Type await their major guests to arrive, but only a few supporters show their faces, likely due to the recent events. Those who do arrive to support, despite what transpired, are the CEO of Smaven's, Alana Teague, and Makai of the Roaring Dragons. Tempest overall is disappointed in the turnout. However, he understands that Smaven's support was enough, but still needed to host his two guests. In a long three-way conversation with Alana Teague and Makai, we learn that Alana is built like a goddess. She is here on behalf of Blood Vein Sciences. Her and her husband are the figureheads and face of Blood Vein Sciences. She herself is a product of her husband's many fields of expertise in body modification. Alana proposes their support by way of donation of services to modify any problematic physical mutations of mutants. Makai butts in the conversation and doesn't introduce himself as an affiliate of the Roaring Dragons as not to scare off or tip Alana. Makai asks a series of questions designed to highlight the shady dealings of Blood Vein's past in front of Tempest. Tempest begins to feel her dishonesty and nervousness within her answers, and Alana retreats to the restroom away from being put on the spot. Tempest thanks Makai for revealing her true motives, and he now has gained a better understanding of Blood Vein's dealings per Makai's knowledge. Makai is suave and cool, as well as intelligent. He and Tempest gain a great understanding of each other. Makai learns that the center that Tempest is building will be for all of the infected, mutated and non-mutated, and will be built within weeks. Tempest makes it clear that he is open to any and all help and seeking advisors as long as their goals are aligned with his own. Before departing, Makai makes a significant donation to Tempest and exchanges contact information with him for future business. The camera cuts to Makai exiting to his limo with his entourage. He sees Alana Teague waiting by his vehicle as he approaches. Alana states that Makai seems to think he knows so much about Blood Vein but doesn't know enough about her as an individual. Makai plays his cards right with her for the rest of the evening, and they end up spending time with each other. Alana loosens up in his condo, and Makai genuinely enjoys her company and time spent, all while learning major intel about Blood Vein's life sciences campaign, the mysterious scientists, and their mysterious academy plans in the works, all without even knowing she's speaking to the prince of their rival dynasty. Makai and Alana sip wine while watching a romantic film, Fading Light 6, The Brightest Dark, on Havenflix. Makai's futuristic projector displays the Ultra 130K holographic visuals across the window of his condo as they enjoy this great movie by actor Roy Rushmore. The scene jumps back to Tempest, R-Type, and his agent in his condo, reflecting on the day's events and fundraiser in front of the TV as the news plays. The cell phone footage, along with Arrington Slade's lying, is gaining momentum, as 30% of the public seem to fear and or hate Tempest now because they don't understand what happened. Suddenly, a breaking news story appears. This just in. A massive 10-story high mutant abomination is laying ruin in the South Haven slums, causing mass destruction, confusion, and chaos as civilians causing mass destruction, confusion, and chaos as civilians can be seen devouring each other as if they had become stark raving mad. We then see the camera footage of a giant towering mass of mutating bodies stacked upon two massive humanoid walking legs while releasing a purple putrid mist through the streets. The person holding the camera is then attacked by a zombified human who attacks and begins to bite and maul the person's face off on camera. R-Type leans off of the wall and steps closer to the TV for a better look at this creature. Tempest questions what exactly the creature is as he watches it in awe. R-Type informs Tempest that he'll be back. Tempest turns to R-Type to say where he's going, but R-Type vanished. Scene. South Haven slums. A giant abomination, a Gamma Fiend, a 10-story tall mass of mutated mountain comprised of human corpses of those who have died mid-mutation or are still alive mid-mutation, suffocating in agony amongst each other, clusters of victims melded together. It begins trampling over buildings, civilians, and vehicles as people run for their lives from it, only to run into the mist, which seeps into their brain, causing it to rot and then turn them into feral, cannibalistic lunatics. The Gamma Fiend keels over onto its knees and begins to spew up rotten, irradiated corpses out of multiple orifices of its disgusting and fleshy mass. Waves of gamma sludge and gook filled with corpses hit the streets. The corpses become animated and begin to chase down civilians. Special squads and law enforcement begin to block off roads and open fire on the Gamma Fiends and its minions. The camera cuts to R-Type X walking through the barricade as bullets whiz past him, hitting waves of oncoming fiends running at full speed. Suddenly, dozens of R-Type energy clones flicker into existence, all standing aside him, filling up the entire street. About 30 fiends get closer and closer when all 12 clones disperse above and beyond as instructed, leaving just R-Type. R-Type begins punching and kicking his way through the horde while moving closer to the source, the Gamma Fiend. A ravenous woman charges at him with a ripped, gaping mouth full of gamma sludge. She jumps on top of a car and leaps toward him. R-Type turns her direction and aims his finger like a gun, firing a beam of energy that takes her head clear off. He then ducks under a pouncing fiend, right into a bone-breaking two-punch combo into the torso and head of a fiend, shattering its head in half. A fiend charges him from the side as he sidesteps twice, right into a head-shattering kick, smashing the face of another target. The camera ascends from the street and onto the rooftops where you see R-Type's clones, laying waste to oncoming fiends while they move toward the Gamma Fiend itself. 3 combat turbocopters sent by the military dart across the sky toward the Gamma Fiend. You rarely see the government use their high tech. They still equip their officers with mechanical firearms and equipment. Their laser Gatling guns begin to rip off thousands of laser beams that tear into the Gamma Fiend, decapitating its limb. The pilot relays back to base that the lasers are indeed effective, and he begins to elaborate, but is immediately destroyed when a large tentacle with a razor-sharp bone scythe protruding out of the Gamma Fiend's mass slices all 3 copters in half, blowing them up. An R-Type clone, who's surveying the field, sees how effective the lasers were. R-Type X finishes up a group of fiends, then propels himself up into the air and begins running and scaling up the city building to the roof. 2 clones accompany him, running alongside while he begins to charge up energy in his hand. The Gamma Fiend sends his tentacle, slicing rows of buildings completely in half as homes containing families crumble, obliterating everything within them. All of R-Type's clones surround the Fiend from the rooftops once the majority of the area has been evacuated, secured, and cleared of innocent civilians. Haven military barricades the Fiend's in. The entire half of the district is being quarantined. A clone approaches R-Type from the side and provides all the strategic information that the scout clones have gathered on the situation and the Fiend's capabilities. R-Type learns of its weak points and capabilities from testing its range and reaction time, and decides that he must speed up this plan. This Fiend is extremely irradiated, and its overbearing radiation rays can cause mass mutation within himself, something his energy mastery may not be able to protect from for a long time. R-Type directs all of his clones to attack the Gamma Fiend's leg. The clones all form energy weapons and attack, as instructed. 2 growing orbs of energy behind R-Type begin erupting, causing debris to float off of the ground. The glowing light captures the attention of the Gamma Fiend, and it sends 4 giant humanoid arms protruding from its mass. Each arm has various points of razor-sharp bone exposed and being swung at R-Type as he and the orbs swiftly flip and vault from body part to body part, evading the creature, while occasionally shooting balls of energy at the creature. The blast hits with an impact, sending shreds of flesh up into the air. R-Type barely escapes each swing as he continues to charge a bead of light in his palm. At this pace and level of distraction, R-Type understands that he will not be able to charge his attack like he wants. The Gamma Fiend's attacks are oddly and extremely precise and coordinated. The Fiend begins to expel another wave of mist from its body, to which R-Type must then focus his efforts to have his clones create their energy fields again. He does this until the mist dissipates. His clone forms energy chains and begin to bind the Fiend's leg while they pelt it with attacks from all angles. This in turn brings the creature down to one knee. R-Type's eyes open wide as he begins to yell. The white bead of energy charging in his hand instantly expands into a ball of energy half the size of the Gamma Fiend. The camera cuts to a news channel reporting the events, being only described as a result of gamma radiation and mutation, and then they show the governor declaring martial law and the isolation of all infected. The camera cuts back to R-Type X. He stands on the roof breathing hard as two orbs of energy charge on standby behind him. The giant erupting ball of light that he shot at the beast is still in place, consuming the top portion of the creature completely. It sends gusts of wind blowing throughout the streets, sending fiends hurling into walls and windows. R-Type's clones brace themselves from the rooftops as the wind almost blows them back as well. The piercing bright light reflects off of R-Type's eyes, and everything fades to white. In fades a middle-aged woman looking down at a young Ryu. A simple breath can dominate a hurricane. A lone tear can conquer a tsunami. I am your mother, and if I can teach you only one thing in this life, sweet child, is that you can be wrong. You can bleed. You are not the most powerful, yet you are the most powerful. You can be great, yet you can be nothing. Either way, you will be loved by us. She then rubs her hand through his hair and tells him that she loves him. The scene snaps back to R-Type X and his clones watching the light show. R-Type is from a land where a neighboring island that contained giant monsters from what seemed like the embodiment of fears, sorrows, and nightmares of people existed. To be in the presence of something big and terrifying again was comforting for Ryu. He ponders that this creature could most definitely symbolize the fear and hate of the people toward the Gamma infected in this city. Metaphors aside, this is an opportunity to cut loose, his mother would say. As the energy begins to fade, R-Type senses that the creature is still alive, as it slowly begins to mutate further, now half the size it once was. It grows human-like arms and begins to flop around, crashing into buildings. With the intense radiation in the area burning the surface of his energy shields protecting his body, R-Type determines that this is taking too much time and prepares to continue his special maneuver to finish the wretched being. R-Type releases the two charged orbs the size of trucks, and they go flying in opposite directions until they reach the perimeter of the mutating Gamma Fiend, stunned by the first orb of energy that hit it. R-Type gets ready to orchestrate the next phase of his attack when suddenly, two large robotic arms break through the roof from under him, grabbing Ryu's ankles and pulls him through the building, hurling him through an entire row of cubicles. R-Type X leans up, vision cloudy and blurry from all the debris. A hulking and muscular humanoid man bound with muscles and clad in armor begins charging toward Ryu. A giant symbol of anarchy can be seen glowing on its helmet. Its eyes glow red as a trail of light can be seen as this large android-like being approaches and is deceptively fast for its size. Two of R-Type's clones jump through the hole to assist Ryu, but are immediately met with a tractor beam ray that begins to severely slow their movement, so much so that they land awkwardly on the ground. While gaining their footing, they are both attacked by a smaller humanoid android. Its speed was jarring, and it throws flurries of chops and strikes into the necks of both clones, pushing them back toward the window. The clones begin to defend and block the strikes as R-Type X's Libra begins to learn and prepare for the android strikes. It throws a kick to the clone's midsection, but it's blocked. And then it follows it up with a kick that defied human anatomy and sends a neck-snapping kick, causing the energy clone to dissipate. It then begins attacking the other clone using more unorthodox martial arts as it contorts its body in various ways, attacking from unpredictable angles. R-Type's Libra seems to be getting outsmarted. The moment R-Type shows he is learning the attack patterns from the androids, the AI of the android picks up on the improvement of R-Type and changes styles completely. It does this rapidly and shifts between styles like a Rubik's Cube, and with this slight advantage, it's able to go toe-to-toe with a small horde of R-Type X clones. The real R-Type X flips up onto his feet and sidesteps the hawking android as it tries to charge him. As soon as it reaches and misses R-Type, instead of charging past, it stops on a dime and throws a skull-cracking elbow to Ryu's head so hard that one of its clones that's fighting the other android completely dissipates. R-Type stumbles as he's never been hit while evading, ever, not since sparring with his mother when he was young. R-Type is dazed. The big android man begins to approach when R-Type shoots a large beam of dark blue energy from his hand at the android, but the android swiftly ducks it and begins crawling towards R-Type, continuing its pursuit. R-Type, still disoriented, begins to scoot back, then flips up to his feet. The hawking android hops onto its feet as well, just before digging its hand into the ground and rips up the ground from underneath R-Type, forcing him to leap up into the air. While in the air, he looks over at his other clone to see how it's doing against the smaller android, and he sees as his clone sends an energy blade through the android's head. Vroom! However, this doesn't stop the android from grabbing the clone's head with both hands and crushing its head in its grip, destroying the clone completely. R-Type realizes that these two enemies are a serious threat under these circumstances. R-Type stands on his feet, squares up, and prepares to take them both on. Ryu summons 5 clones, all meant to play a certain role, and they attack both androids in formation. After 30 minutes of intense combat, R-Type manages to outsmart the AI once again and blasts a wave of energy that rips the hawking android in half. The untiring R-Type X and his 3 remaining clones begin to battle the smaller clone. The smaller clone calls upon little orbs that revolve around all fighters. The orbs release a tractor beam on its targets, slowing their speed down immensely. Every now and then, one of R-Type's clones is able to release a wave of energy that destroys the orbs, but then the android produces more orbs, and every time you take your focus off of the android to attack the orbs, you're then punished with a deadly, lethal strike. R-Type develops a plan, and him and his clones make their way toward the big windows, while barely managing to defend the persistent onslaught of deadly strikes from the android. Once by the window, R-Type summons 3 more clones to assist the other 3 in grabbing and holding the android as he focuses his power. 5 of the 6 clones are immediately dispatched while attempting to grab the clone, but slowed it down enough in time for R-Type to shout out, "Sun kisses Earth!" The 2 large orbs of light from earlier, meant for the Gamma Fiend, come flying through the building, both from behind the android, crashing into it and pushing it out of the high building before exploding into a giant red and yellow flash of light, completely eradicating the android. R-Type falls to his knees as he looks out the window, down into the street, and sees the Gamma Fiend recovering as more and more corpses rise from the dead in the street. R-Type suddenly hears a sound and looks over his back into the building. He looks to his left and sees a zombie shambling over to him, its body glowing with radiation in the dark. He then turns to the right, but just as he does so, the hulking android's animated torso leans up and fires its giant robotic fist at R-Type, and it crashes square into his face, sending him flying, unconscious, out of the window from a 7-story building. The Gamma Fiend, though half of its original size, begins to cause destruction again and press forward toward the barricades, causing the military to block off and quarantine more and more of the district, while losing more and more of their people to death and zombification. Scene. Secret Sealab. Unknown area in the ocean. The camera approaches from above and descends onto the abandoned Vanillith Sealab. It's a small island that is linked to a high-tech lab that goes underwater. Dozens of ravenous glowing fiends in lab coats can be seen darting across the island chasing wildlife. From the sky, a squad of androids land onto the sand, all appearing different than one another, but with one theme in common. Each android represented a piece from the game of chess. This was the King's Hand. The Queen, a deadly hand-to-hand combat specialist with melee weapon skills, was a total killing machine. The Rook, a smaller humanoid android with blazing speed and deceptive style combat that can attack with swift ninja-like precision. The King, an intimidating android that specializes in defenses. And 2 bishops, androids wielding high-tech firearms with various ammo types at their disposal. A giant mechanical steed also appears. This was the Knight, and upon it we see Anarchy 12, composed and clad in a high-tech exosuit. He dribbles his eye across the island like he had just discovered the continent and plans to conquer it. His unit begins to approach the entrance to the Sealab. Dozens of ravenous fiends spot the group and mindlessly attack them, but as a unit, the fiends cannot even get close before the Rooks fire headshot upon headshot with napalm rounds that disintegrate their targets' whole abdomens. Anarchy hops off of the Knight and approaches the sealed lab door. With a wave of his fingers and a few hacks from his wrist device, the door opens in front of him. Immediately, the zombified and gammified remains of the Vanillith family come pouring and rushing the doorway. Anarchy doesn't even have to move because they run right into a giant shield that expands from the King's arm. A wave of concussion energy slams into the fiends, throwing them back into the building as the Queen enters in afterwards and slices them all into 100 pieces swiftly with her high-tech katana. Anarchy recalls hearing that the Vanilliths were left for dead by Porter and his uncle during a sudden accident, and he also knows that whatever caused the accident is located here. 15 minutes pass as Anarchy and the King's Hand traverse the deadly corridors of the abandoned lab while killing all gammified zombies that approach. Anarchy reaches a room with a window to a larger room. He looks in the window and sees an extremely large craft. It's half covered in ooze, and he can see where Porter got all the ooze from. Anarchy releases Swarm, little mechanical insects, out onto the wall, blowing it up. Anarchy and the King's Hand walk through, and the King surveys the entire perimeter with its defense matrix and spots 5 threats in the entire hangar. The Rooks split up and take advantageous positioning, ready to fire shots when needed. Anarchy approaches the computer by the craft and extracts all data from it. From this data, he learns that the ship is not from this planet. Anarchy's mind is blown as he looks and learns that there are other planets other than the one they're on. Everyone since the beginning of time has been told that nothing exists off of this world, and even that the world that they live on now is flat. The thought of spherical planets sounds ridiculous and calls into question everything that's been taught to him. Anarchy learns that this craft had entered their orbit and crashed into the city, covered in radiation from another solar system. The ooze covering the ship is some sort of defense and crash safety mechanism that protects the pilot from harm. However, they have not been able to find a way to open the cockpit. Anarchy approaches the craft to see if the technology is similar enough to what he can manipulate, and turns out it is. He manipulates the signals and electronics and causes the craft door to fly open, revealing a thin, green-skinned humanoid bound to its chair naked. Its face completely covered in 3 rows of black eyes. It leans up instantly, and waves of utter fear and terror strikes Anarchy's heart like a harpoon. Anarchy immediately propels himself backward into the formation of the King's Hand with his jet boots. The being stands up out of its craft seat, appearing to be no taller than 5 feet. Images begin to flash into the mind's eye of Anarchy that begin to stress him out so much that a few strands of his hair begin to turn white. He falls to his knees, holds his head, and looks extremely frightened as images, sounds, and terrors rack his mind so badly that he orders his rook to end his life. The rook identifies the stress, pain, and seriousness in his voice and takes aim. But the king, whose defensive programming overwrites the variables of stress and puts more weight into the metric of mind control, commands the rook to stand down. The knight gathers Anarchy, who is losing his mind, and flees the island with the King's Hand. As the King's Hand retreats, the alien craft can be seen flying out from the lab in the back as the lab explodes entirely. Scene.